You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Let's play a little game of Would You Rather, School Counselor Edition. Okay, would you rather spend your weekend planning a group or spend your afternoon sitting in irrelevant PD? Yikes. Or would you rather be the only counselor with no one to collaborate with, or to spend hours searching online for engaging activities? All of these options are pretty bad, right? But unfortunately, they're all too real. But what if I told you I had a solution for you? What if I told you I had access to hundreds of school counseling lessons, groups, and activities, counselor-specific trainings on the topics you need most, and a community of like-minded school counselors to support you? You would say, yes, please. Well, that is what Impact is all about. Impact is my monthly membership for school counselors, and it helps you with all of these things. You get access to hundreds of resources. That's unlimited free downloads. Log in and get what you need right away to every single resource that's in my store. We add new resources each and every month. We're adding a new middle school and elementary resource each month, and some of these are bonus Impact exclusives, meaning that you can get resources just for members. You can request resources that you need and easily search so you can find exactly what you're looking for. And let's talk about the trainings, counselor-specific trainings on the topics you need most. We do these each and every month as part of our Coffee with the Counselor series. Impact members get to join for absolutely free. You earn PD certificates and you get exclusive access to members-only things like the Ultimate Small Group Experience and our Summer Summit Conference. And the community. Y'all, this is possibly my favorite part of Impact. I so look forward to jumping on these calls, to getting to know counselors who are similar to me and also completely different. It's so fun to hear from your experiences and your challenges, and everyone brings a unique perspective to the table. We have an exclusive online community, and we even have a cool app where you can chat with other counselors in these community circles. We have our monthly calls, like I mentioned, twice a month, and we share wins, troubleshoot tough cases, and just talk about what it's like to be a counselor, because so often we're on our own island at our school sites. So if any of that sounds like it's for you, I would love to see you inside Impact. Go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact to solve all of your counselor problems. And I have a special offer for my listeners. Use code POD at checkout to save 10% off your first month. Okay, let's go to today's episode. Hey there, thanks for listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. So today I want to talk to you all about paperless individual counseling. I'm going to be sharing with you some hands-on activities to keep your students engaged. And yes, they're paperless, which means they are low prep and super easy to implement. So if you are a on-the-fly counselor or need a little more time, which I think we can all relate to, then I think you're going to love this episode. Now, when I say paperless, some of you may be thinking, oh gosh, she's going to talk about digital resources. And I'm not this week. I'll talk more about digital resources next week, and you don't want to miss that one either. But this week, I'm going to be talking about some hands-on things you can do that are paperless. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. So I said these strategies were going to help increase student engagement. And I feel like engagement is one of those education buzzwords you probably hear a lot, like highly engaging increases engagement. What's engagement? Why does engagement matter? Well, engagement is how involved the child is in the learning process, right? Are they into it? Are they interested? Do they think it's fun and challenging? Or are they bored and zoned out? Now, engagement matters because the more engaged the student is in the session, then the more likely they are to meet their counseling goals or objectives, which is our whole job, right? If they come to you and you're unprepared and they're bored, no one's going to make progress. And remember, our role as the school counselor is to be short-term and solution-focused. So I'm going to give you some ideas for fun hands-on activities that you can use to increase student engagement. And creating a memorable session helps students retain and connect with concepts. I want you to think about your own educational history, maybe when you were in elementary school. And if you think about some standout lessons or standout activities or games that you did, it was probably things that were really fun, and you probably remember what you talked about. Maybe you had to make a solar system, one of those things with all the styrofoam balls, like a little solar system art project. And maybe that really helped you retain the information about the planets. Or I know for me, I think it was through our school counselor or some kind of character education, we were learning about cooperation, and we all went outside and we made a human chain to act like we were pulling this big turnip out of the ground. and we couldn't pull it out until everyone was working together. So those hands-on, fun, and memorable activities are going to help your students retain and connect with the concepts. And plus, it's just more fun. Who doesn't want it to be more fun? It's more fun for the kiddos, and it's more fun for you. And the students can tell your vibe. So if you would come in and you're kind of bored or frazzled, they can pick up on that. So it's way better to have something fun. So first, let's talk about role play with figurines. Now, this is the first activity idea I have for you, and you can just use I grabbed things that my kids have at home. So I had like some toy safari animals, like a little little person, and then some cars, different things. Now, why this works is because it removes awkward barriers and initiates conversation. Sometimes if you're talking to a student about their family dynamics or about divorce or something that's going on at home, they may shut down, right? It may be, a lot for them to talk, especially in the one-on-one setting, and they may be feeling vulnerable. So role-playing using figurines is a great way to externalize their feelings to the figurine. Like, oh, well, the giraffe does this. Or you could say, who in your family would be which animal and why? That's kind of a cool way to peek into their brains. Again, you want to offer a variety of objects so they can kind of pick and choose. The second activity idea I have for you is role play with chairs. So if you're familiar with Gestalt therapy from grad school, you maybe have heard of the empty chair technique. So this is where you can have a student sit in a chair and then have an empty chair, and you can use this technique where they're kind of talking to themselves, so maybe giving themselves advice, or they could be talking to someone else, maybe talking to a friend that they're having a conflict with, rehearsing, kind of role-playing what they would do in that situation. Maybe talking to a family member. Maybe you're using it in a grief session and they're talking to someone who they can't physically talk to anymore. It can be a really powerful exercise. Again, it's a way to externalize feelings and remove those awkward barriers. I like to use it for conflict resolution and perspective taking. So, you could have the student change seats. Like, well, how would you feel if if you were your friend and this happened? That can be pretty cool. You could even have two students come in and switch the chairs. Now, the third activity idea I have for you is using Play-Doh or modeling clay. Now, this is always fun, especially with the littles, because you can do paperless illustrations. So instead of, printing out something and getting out the colors, they can mold, something for you. Something that you would typically have them draw, they can mold for you. You can also role play like you did with the figurines. You can make little people or little animals out of the clay. You can use it to make emotion faces. So you can make smiley faces or frowny faces. And just playing with the modeling clay or Play-Doh itself can be really therapeutic. It works as kind of a mini stress ball. You'll probably find yourself playing with it as well. The next activity idea I have for you is a ball toss. Now you can get a beach ball, blow up beach ball. That way it doesn't take up a ton of space in your office because you can deflate it when you're not using it. And you can stick some little stickers on it to, have a conversation starter. I always do these. I use these in small groups and individual. But individual is just a cool way to start tossing the ball. Maybe even have a little basketball hoop in your office. You could use a basketball. Just something to get the conversation going and to provide some discussion questions. Another activity idea that's hands-on and paperless for individual counseling are Lego. I actually recently learned that the plural of Lego is Lego and not Legos, but it does still seem a little awkward saying it. So I had to provide that disclaimer. But the, Danish people would be proud. So why Lego can work is because it can, provide a distraction, which encourages sharing. Some kids might be intimidated, and I say some kids, almost all kids will feel intimidated in a one-on-one session with a lot of eye contact with an adult, right? Especially if they don't have a prior relationship to you. So if you can build something together, if they're kind of building while you're talking, that works. You don't even have to use the Lego in the, conversation. It can just be something they're kind of working with, fidgeting with while you're having a conversation. Or you could use them to role play, build little figurines. You can use it as an analogy, like, okay, we're building up. Like, what are the building blocks of a friendship, or building up when we're setting goals? What are things that would tear this down, right? What are things that would, take away from you meeting your goal or hurt a friendship? So that's kind of a cool analogy that you can use, a visual. And you could also use like magnet tiles. I know my kids love those, or something different if you don't want to use Lego, but it's kind of the same concept. Then we have good old Jenga. I love Jenga. So Jenga is a great conversation starter. Each block can have a different discussion question or conversation starter on it. Again, you can use it for that analogy of building up. So, creating a friendship tower, and what are qualities of a good friend or a healthy friendship. We're going to build these up. But then as we talk about things that are unhealthy in a friendship or qualities of a negative friendship, we would take it down and you see what happens to the tower. So that's kind of fun. And you can easily personalize it, personalize the questions to fit the student you're working with. I have a few more, so I'm going through these kind of fast. But next up is soda pop. So this is a fun one to discuss anger. So you'll get a can, of soda or a bottle of soda, shake it up, have the student talk like, what's the first thing that makes you feel angry? And then what happens? And then what happens? And talk about how anger kind of builds up. And so they're shaking that bottle every time. And you could even do a social story, like where a student in the story has a few angry things happen, like maybe at home their cereal spills and then they're late for the bus and then they realize they forgot their homework, and then their friend's mad at them, each little thing, until finally they pop and then you open it and it's going to fizz everywhere. So that's kind of fun. Can be messy, but definitely hands-on and memorable. Another messy but fun one is a volcano. So I've done this with my kids before. It's kind of a science experiment, but you can talk about how anger bubbles up and you build these volcanoes, using clay, and then you do the baking soda and vinegar, and then they'll erupt. So that's really fun to do in an anger management group as well. Super memorable. And a dry erase board. So if you have like an Etch-a-Sketch or a dry erase board, this is a cool thing you can do. Also, there's like Magnadoodle boards with the pens. It's very visual and empowering way to teach negative thoughts. So they can write out their negative thoughts and then you can erase them. So you can shake it off so they disappear, right? So that's a really cool way to talk about negative thoughts, or, growth mindset versus fixed mindset. You could erase the fixed mindset and replace it with a growth mindset, something like that. You could do this with a standard whiteboard as well, but kind of more fun with the Magnadoodle or dry erase, or Etch-a-Sketch. Next up is a music playlist. So this is fun. You can have your kiddos make a playlist, like make a Spotify playlist, and it kind of serves as a get to know you activity. You can see what kind of style of music they like, and it can kind of align with your students' passions, but it's also a great coping strategy. So have them, get in your office and make a playlist of songs they can listen to when they're feeling upset, when they're feeling angry. Maybe they're going to go on a run and they need like some pump up music just to like get it out. Or maybe they want really calm music so they can relax and settle down in a calm down corner. You can help them kind of source this playlist. It can be a really fun activity, especially for older students. I've got a couple more for you guys. Food. So you want to consider potential allergens. Of course, I feel like I have to say that. And you want to consider red dye and sugar and all the things. But this can be fun because kids love snacks, don't we all? And you can kind of personalize this to fit the preferences of your students. So if you have a student who loves pretzels, you could do it with pretzels or something. But food can be a conversation starter, like if you have different color food, like if you're doing Starburst or something, and the different colors can be a different thing. Like if you draw red, talk about a time you felt angry. If you draw yellow, talk about a time you felt happy. And then of course you get to eat the candy. And again, this can be a fun analogy. So for emotions, it could be an analogy for different coping skills. You can literally correlate the colors of the food to different, anything you want, coping strategies, emotions, anything. And if you don't want to do candy, I know I'm not big into the candy, you could even do it with fruit or something, like red is strawberries, blue is blueberries. So you can kind of personalize it to fit your needs and your school's vibe. But it's a great conversation starter and just a fun thing to do for sure, especially if you're doing like a lunch bunch or something. The last one I have for you is plants. So you may not be thinking about gardening when it comes to school counseling, but this is a great analogy. It's a great analogy for friendship, talking about nurturing. You got to plant the seeds, then you have to take care of your friendships. And how do you take care of them? You're watering them. So this would obviously work well with an individual student that you're seeing over the course of time, and each week, hopefully the plant's growing. And if it's not, you're going out and buying a fake one. I'm just kidding. But hopefully the plant's growing and you can talk about, the analogy, like what does the sunshine represent? How would that represent being a good friend? What does the rain represent or the water represent? Not only friendship, you could use this with growth mindset. Many things you could use a plant analogy for. Roots, you could talk about like grounding and roots. It can also be an attendance motivator because they want to come back every week to see what their plant's up to. Is it growing? Is it still alive? And it can be a take-home gift. So at the end of counseling, they can take it home and have a nice memory of their counseling sessions with you. And it doubles as a coping strategy. So gardening is a great coping strategy that many adults enjoy, and you can introduce this to students at a younger age. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you're feeling ready for amazing paperless individual sessions. And again, just because they're paperless doesn't mean they have to be digital. They can be hands-on, like all of these things we've discussed. We talked about plants, food, playlists, dry erase boards, volcanoes, soda pop, Jenga, Lego, discussion ball toss, Play-Doh, chair role play, and figurine role play. So hopefully you have some ideas that you can try. Try one tomorrow. Let me know how it goes. I would love to hear. You can always reply to any of the emails I send you or send me a DM on Instagram at Bright Futures Counseling. I would love to hear how it goes and if you like it. Some of these things I mentioned do cost money, and I want to mention that. But you can always inquire about funds. I don't want you to spend a lot of money on, Play-Doh or toys or food or plants for your kiddos, but see if your school has some funding, like a character ed fund or something. You might be surprised what you can do, or maybe some donations from families or something. All right, guys, thank you so much. Have a beautiful week, and I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.